So I'm going to present this now as if, or the way that we did, approximately the way that we did a year ago. The only thing that's been changed in here is that we showed a little bit more previous experience of past projects that I took out because A, I don't want to bore you, and B, it's sort of irrelevant to a certain degree. And then the other thing we took out is the end. Sometimes they ask for budgets, sometimes they ask for other information, and so I took that out of this part of the presentation because, again, it's something that you can develop on your own, and it's specific to projects. Okay, so when I come in, the first thing I always do is I always have this introductory slide. So I say who I am, I introduce Maria, I introduce Carl, I talk about who we are. And I say, I make it personal. I say, I'm from the island of Maui. That's where I grew up, and I lived there until I graduated from high school. Maria was born and raised here in Phoenix, which is here. And we both went to grad school in London. We lived there for 2 years. So we lived in these different environments, really rural, really urban, and then something in between. And that's something that Maria and I really enjoyed, is this in between, the kind of compromise with the hybrid of the two. We had opportunities to stay in London and work in London and in Germany, and we decided to come back to Phoenix because we really wanted to affect change here. We wanted to see what we could do here. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with this project. We've been trained as both artists and architects, so we have this blending of art and architecture, and we have the hybrid in between. Those are things, again, to compromise the middle ground. Those are what we're interested in, and public art is really a lot about that. Because studio artwork doesn't have to compromise, but once it goes out in front of the public, there is some sense of compromise that has to happen. I'm going to talk a little bit about a project that we just completed. This is a park in Tempe, Arizona. It was recently renamed Evelyn Hallman Park. It was named after a woman that lived in the neighborhood who found the park in a really bad state, and she just started going in by herself and started fixing up the park on her own. And then she organized people in the neighborhood and got them together, and they started going into the park and cleaning it up. And then they started going after grants, and they started getting grants to actually clean up the park more. And now it's actually a really beautiful park, and a lot of people use it. Boy Scouts camp there and everything. There's a lake there and some really lush areas. But we were told, this piece of public art that they asked us to do should be commemorative of Evelyn Hallman, but not contain her likeness. And so I started asking them about Evelyn Hallman, and they said that she really liked this part of the park, a part that most people really didn't really appreciate. Low desert scrub, creosote all over the place, kind of dry and open. There's a little path that's hard to see in the slide that runs through here. This was her favorite part of the park. And Evelyn Hallman was also known for befriending homeless people that nobody else liked and that were really annoying all the business owners down on Mill Avenue. She would actually befriend them and everything, so she was kind of known for loving the unlovable. And so we started looking into creosotes. They said creosotes were her favorite plant, which is why she liked this part of the park. And we found out all these amazing facts, like creosotes can actually live to be 15,000 years old, and each plant can produce 30 million flowers in its lifespan. And the resin that's on the plant, which gives it its fragrance, has actually been used medicinally for 1,000 years by Native Americans and Mexicans to cure everything from halitosis to strep throat. And now it's actually, the resin is being studied to see if it'll cure HIV and cancer. So it's a totally amazing plant. And so we started looking at different forms in the plant. You'll see this form reoccur. We thought there were some really beautiful sculptural things that were happening there, and the stamen of the flower, and these seed pods or flower buds. Those were all really neat parts of the plant. So we actually designed 4 different sculptures that were 18 inches tall, all based on these pieces of the plant that were probably about 2 millimeters in size. And we put text associated with those sculptures that talked about the amazing attributes of the flowers and plants. And we actually, we have a part-time partner named Ron Ferris, who's a poet, and he wrote a poem specifically for this project about creosotes called Synaptic Maps, and we included that as one of the last pieces on there. It's a beautiful poem. It says, synaptic maps, rooted shallow, outside of memory, reveal nothing but anatomies of yearning, whose witted nets shelter none, save those overlooked. Discontent to survive unloved, leaving all life internal to calloused over fingertips. Here, by graceful rain, we release such promise, hope innocent and certainty of home. And the reason why we included this project in the presentation is to show that this project was $38,000, the full budget for everything. The project that the Reach 11 project that we're proposing for, or that we proposed the boulders for, was, I think it was $1.5 million. And so what we were trying to say is that for $38,000, this is the kind of commitment that we have with the project. We go all out with every project. It doesn't matter how big it is, but imagine what we would do with $1.5 million if we did this for $38,000, and that was the kind of point we were trying to make. Sometimes we show slides like this that show previous work and all the different materials that we work in. We try and show that from our standpoint, we know how to work with just about any material, so when you see something totally bizarre like boulders pop up, you know we have a good shot of making it happen. Okay, so this brings us to the site for Reach 11. Reach 11 is a soccer tournament park in North Phoenix, and it's got a whole bunch of soccer fields. There's 8 here, I think there's 10 more here, there's a practice field here, there's a baseball park in there. And this is an aerial shot of it. The interesting thing about this aerial shot to us was, you know, this form that cruised around the soccer tournament park. This is the canal, the Central Arizona Project Canal that runs 350 miles from the Colorado River to Phoenix to bring about 1/3 of our water here to the city. And this berm that surrounded 2 sides of the park is about 15 to 20 feet tall that contains the canal, and it was just overbearing on the site. I mean, it was so big and just omnipresent, this giant canal. And that really impressed us. And when you look at the canal, this is it, you know, cruising through part of the city, growing through the desert, and you can see it just goes on and on and on. And you think about this momentous effort that it took, all the energy that it took to bring this water here, how important that was to us, to cross this desert. There's nothing there through a lot of it. All of the man hours that it took, all of the tools, all the digging, what did they do with all the, you know, all of the dirt, and, you know, all of that stuff was just amazing to us. And we thought about it from our standpoint of living in Phoenix, that Phoenix itself is kind of this Herculean effort in its own right for us to even exist here. And we wanted to somehow express that in this project. So, you know, when we look at sports, we started researching soccer. I didn't realize before I started researching it, soccer is about 2,500 years old. It's been around in almost every society. It's even popped up in Rome, Greece, and China. They all had a version of soccer. And sports in general, you build these big, heavy monuments to it all the time, big, impressive things. And you think about the way that sports and activities are played. They're often this play on weight or weightlessness, and this way in which you move your body around, or in the case of sumo wrestling, moving somebody else's body around, or trying to create something incredibly heavy with something almost weightless. And that reminds us in some ways of our natural landscape around in Arizona, and how this Herculean kind of effort, say, digging the Grand Canyon out, you know, through weather, or all of our canyons, and amazing formations like this that don't happen anywhere else, but in the Arizona desert, that talk about this almost, you know, monumental kind of weightiness and heaviness, and yet this amazing elegance at the same time. But in the end, this project is about shade, and that's what we wanted to produce, is something that was simple, something basic, something that had shade. And we had done another project that we had gotten shortlisted by that had to do with umbrellas, and so we showed this as a way of playing off of it. But the umbrella is a perfect example of where to start, just talking about the basic idea of shade. But we want big shade, we want a lot of shade here. But we want weight, we were talking about weight, so let's make it a boulder. But this isn't going to stand, so let's make, you know, 3 stands so that we can hold it up. And then, you know, those stands have a job to do. They have something to say art-wise. And so we want to make them relate to a soccer ball and have them be black and white. But it also relates to the fact that this site is in a floodplain and that it does flood. And we were told that we were not able to put anything on the ground because this is a floodplain and it's going to get washed out. So you have to keep everything off the ground. So we created something that would actually be able to mark how deep the water would be if it ever did get flooded underneath these big boulders. The boulders are heavy, monumental. They are going to produce shade. You're not going to get anything underneath it but shade, which is great, but they're off the ground, so they allow the breezes to run underneath it. So, so they have that purpose as well. They're not going to hold the heat. The way that these boulders can be held on the sticks, we can do all kinds of different things with it. We can make it address our local landscape and our mountains in the distance and actually start to mirror our local mountains. We can have it flow like water, like around a bend, the way that our canyons flow around bends and the way water will work. This is what it would be like to be underneath it and see this changing kind of landscape, being almost like the landscape has been turned upside down and you're existing underneath of it for in a new environment or without gravity or sort of upside down. We also wanted to, there were 4 different sites, you saw those red dots. We wanted the project to be very continuous, like the canal is, or like water. And so we made the forms actually appear to be continuous, even though they had these gaps in between them. So these red dots represent those 4 sites. These are the sites close up, and they have the same kind of flow. And the interesting thing is, you know, we really spent a good deal of time figuring out exactly how to mirror the existing conditions of each of these locations so that these sites had relevance to where they were. And you know, on top of that, we wanted to talk about, here we have these big boulders, so we're hoping that, you know, people would come to the site and say, wow, what are these big boulders all about? You know, is this, what is the artist trying to say with that? And the other side of that is, how do we communicate that in a really subtle way? And so we designed these tools that people have used of working with the earth into these bronze sculptures that would be attached to the stones, not just on top, but sometimes on the side, sometimes on the bottom. And they would be these subtle reminders of ways in which the land has been worked, and talking about the toil and the hardship that people have gone through about building the city and making this Herculean effort occur in the desert. And these are the final renders in various locations, the way that the stones would flow, or what it's like to be underneath them. Again, you can see the way it addresses the existing conditions on the site. This is all really there. And part of our proposal was really about trying to get the views as open as possible through these locations, so that when you were sitting in the shade, the view was not blocked. That's why we actually limited, instead of having 4 stands, we had 3 going to the absolute minimum. And we always end with a thank you slide. That's kind of our cue as well to know that the presentation is ended. And anything that I may have forgotten, I need to throw in at the end. And I usually ask Maria and Carl, did I forget anything? And they say, yes, you forgot this, or whatever. And so that's that presentation. And hopefully that seemed a little bit better than the other one. It made more sense. And I'll just take any questions that you guys have. If you want me to talk more about my process in particular, I can do that. But I think it's also good to develop your own process and how to present. Yes, sir.